Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Eat, Sleep, Arsenal, Repeat podcast, our weekly show in which we look at a more fitness focus on Arsenal, but of course still talking about all things Arsenal and the occurrences that have taken place over the past week. And of course we talk today, we're recording on Tuesday evening, which is only moments after Arsenal have won their second mid-season friendly against AC Milan, which we're going to talk about. We're also going to look ahead to the next Arsenal game against Juventus and lots of the injury stuff and transfer stuff, because there's been quite a lot of transfer stuff going on in the world of Arsenal as well. And then because it's been snowing here in the UK and storming there over in the US, we thought we'd have our end of pod discussion around our fitness goals, about what we can do to kind of tackle the excuses that I have been using not to go outside and run this week. To do so, I'm joined by Sophie from the Highbury Squad. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
Doing good. I was trying to figure out how to do eat, sleep, Arsenal, repeat, a little bit like the YMCA. So we need to come up with,
like I
could do the eat and the sleep, but then the Arsenal and repeat I struggled with. So we need some tips on
the
that.
The aim is when we've done this for 10 years and we're doing like a live show in front of 10,000 people, that they're all doing the eat. Yes, I can see where this is going. We're also joined by Doc Raj. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
Yeah, doing well. Just enjoying some break, enjoying the World Cup. And so,
yeah, we're recording this just as Argentina have gone 3-0 up, so you'll know what the actual score was in the end. But Lionel Messi is quite the player. It's fair to say. Like, goodness me.
Might have a future in the game.
Shouldn't be playing in this game, though, should he, really? He should have had 2 yellow cards and he should have been...
Oh, the controversy.
I feel like we're living in the Truman Show, but that may be another show altogether.
Yeah, I can see the comments now from the Messi stands and the Ronaldo fans.
It's like Star Wars, right? It's good versus evil. I did this article for the Bleacher Report years ago, and it was Messi v Ronaldo, and it felt very Star Wars, good versus evil. And I know that Ronaldo has not covered himself in any glory of late, but this idea that people kind of want to destroy his legacy and this narrative that has been building, that he's this super evil person and Messi is this butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. I think Messi's a teddy bear with a shotgun, and I think Ronaldo is a narcissist in many ways, but both brilliant and both arrogant, but some show it and others don't.
Yeah. I've been winding a few of my members up who aren't the biggest Messi fans every time Argentina go through to the next round. That's been my motive throughout this. But I'm not a big fan of Ronaldo at all. And I was a big fan of La Liga back in the day. I can appreciate Lionel Messi and the brilliance of Barca. But I'm hoping that Arsenal might find themselves having generational talents in different positions. We've spoken in the past about how William Saliba could be the centre back equivalent of those two in the future for us. Fingers crossed he'll be there. But he wasn't involved as Arsenal beat AC Milan in their second mid-season friendly. Soph, did you catch the game? I know it was at a really awkward time for a lot of people out there.
It was an awkward time for me. Unfortunately, I did not, so I can't speak to performances. I of course love the result, and I think it's another, solid confidence builder in the right direction. And Vinny completely agrees with me, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Vinny. Best was going to join.
How dare you come on an Arsenal podcast having not watched the... That's what he's saying. No, lovely stuff. I think that from my perspective, because I know, Raj, you haven't been able to catch it either, it was a really awkward time for those out in the US to tune in for what is, just a glorified friendly. So, it's not like we're playing in the league and people are getting up at these silly hours to watch it. And, of course, Arsenal charging for the game as well, which I know some people have taken umbrage with and decided not to watch them either because of that, which is fair enough. Everyone's entitled to their view on that. I thought it was a really good performance in the sense that we came up against a side that tested us. Lyon didn't test Arsenal at all. They were really poor in their game. They then went and beat Liverpool, ironically, 3-1 in the next game, which kind of tells you maybe where Liverpool are at right now. But, Milan really challenged Arsenal in this fixture. I would have already covered it in the morning 8 a.m. show, so I won't go into too much detail. But I was really impressed with the way in which Arsenal kind of dealt with the pressure. And then when the opportunities came in the final third for us, we took them. A free kick from Martin Ødegaard, fantastic finish. And then, of course, quite a fortunate finish from Reece Nelson, which can then off Odegaard to give him a second goal. Maybe if it hadn't have taken that deflection, it wouldn't have gone in. Who knows? We won't know. But Odegaard's only going to improve confidence. Go on, Soph.
Tom, what are you actually looking for in these games? Because we know the Dubai Cup, it's preseason football, right? But it's a little bit different because we're mid-season and we have a very important fundamental final act of that season to come for the Arsenal in terms of where we are at. We have a major injury to an integral player who has helped get us into that top position, 5 points clear of City. So what is it what's the purpose for you here with these games?
I think winning is the number one. We have to win the games because momentum is so important when going back into the Premier League action. If you think back to the summer and you think about the preseason we won every single game. And we used those, I think it was 5 or 6 games that we had to then go into the season, and we just won and won and won and won. And that momentum is so crucial. And I think it's even more important in a mid-season friendly, which is a complete first and really strange time for us. But after we've had this break and this big distraction of the World Cup, to see the players perform and win and play exactly how we've been playing, no matter who's starting, whether it's players that have been at the World Cup coming back like Partey and White did today, or players that have barely played much football for us, playing the way in which we have topped the table this season. That for me is the key thing. I mean, Raj, for you is like momentum must be massive. But so far the question, do you think there's anything more than just momentum that we need to look to in these mid-season friendlies?
I think results are key, like you said, because of course you want to win the games and that's important. But then the second part, the aspect you mentioned was how they're playing. And so the rhythm that they're playing with, which we know was integral to having this 5-point lead, right? Having that fitness, having that rhythm, having that chemistry is critical. And the other part I'm looking at is the fitness aspect, because we've talked about it before. I think me and you, Tom, is you can't replicate in-game fitness without playing in matches. So I want to see how they are now reacclimating to these in-game demands and seeing how the players are able to do that. And, guys, when players come back who are playing their first game, like a Ben White, for example, you want to see how they're readapting and those aspects, because, there has been now a relatively significant gap of time between the last match and their most recent one. So, as this kind of second preseason moves along, I'm looking more and more at how they're ramping up for the actual Premier League season for the
Doc,
second half.
I have a question for you in terms of, aside from the Benjamin Whites of the world and the Sakas and Xhakas who are coming back into the fray, having been an integral part of the team, can you explain to me a little bit of the players on the periphery who are part of the Dubai Cup, who maybe have a chance to come in January, FA Cup? We're going to have potential injuries, who knows, fatigue, mental, fatigue as well after World Cup. How that fitness ramps up, because is it different? Like if you're playing under 21s, or if you're one of the guys on the periphery and you haven't been as active or competitive in the Premier League or the World Cup, what's the differences there if you are having to jump in?
I mean, yeah, it's a significant difference because you haven't really played in the number of matches or the same intensity of matches. And they'll do their best. The physio staff will do their best to try and take them through those sessions to try to adapt to that. And you even have players, for example, after games who haven't played, who will go through either warm up and cool down sessions as well to get them that conditioning aspect. But there is still that jump into matches. So, you're doing your best to try to give them enough time to adapt to that. And the preseason is a good time for that because, like you said, you don't have all your normal players playing their normal amount of minutes. So you're trying to then give these players balance games to build up their baseline level of fitness. So when they do play in that cup game, or they do have to play in that substitution role, or if there is an injury, which we might see a few of, throughout the league, not just for Arsenal, right? They can jump in and kind of hit the ground running. But it's a fine balance. It's not easy to do. And that's why this break can be difficult to navigate, because you just had guys really building up that match fitness, and then you take a break and now you've kind of built it back up again, right? So it's almost that pause. And it's, it presents itself with a lot of new variables. Just we have never seen this before.
Yeah, and I think that with the way in which we've got this staggered return of players, Arteta managing when to start and how much to use and when to bring others into the fold is going to be absolutely critical to get that spot on, because White and Partey came back in today after a few days training, played a half, came off at half time for Cedric and for El Neni, who replaced them. And then we've obviously got Granit Xhaka's back. He waived a little bit of his holiday. He did spend some time off, but waived. The players have been offered, to my understanding, 7 days off, and then some of them have waived it. Some have decided to come back a little bit early. Bukayo Saka and Ramsdale are now back in Dubai as well. Whether or not they'll feature at all in the game on Saturday against Juventus, we'll have to wait and see. But Tomiyasu, Martinelli and Xhaka are said to be back in training this week, and so could be involved in some way, shape or form against Juve. I don't expect Saka and Ramsdale to be involved, to be honest. And so if that then gives Arteta a really weird dynamic for the game against West Ham, because there's then 9 days between the 17th when we play Juve and then this game on Boxing Day. If you're Arteta, you've seen Saka play a lot of football in a short space of time at the World Cup. You've seen players like Ramsdale, play nothing. Ben White play nothing. William Saliba, of course, if he gets to the final, will be coming back after 8 days or probably around 7 days off, but has not played at all throughout the tournament. How do you think the differing amount of football that the players have played on the pitch? Yes, they've been training, but how much do you think the differing effects of playing and not playing in this tournament over the course of what has been 5 to 6 weeks will impact how they all return to the field and also potentially impact Arteta's decision of how he reintegrates them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think on our first episode, we may have touched with the doc a little bit on the mental side of things. So if you haven't played in game, like Martinelli and Jesus didn't, but Brazil still lost, what does that mean to you? I spoke to Warren Barton and Kev about this yesterday as well. If you're Saka, you've played in that England game, how differently are you affected by maybe Ramsdale who didn't? And they felt as players, there's definitely a different impact when you're in the moment and in the game versus having not exerted that mental and physical energy in a match that took a lot out of you. I think Saka has proved to everybody that he is a mental monster and he is somebody who can come back from adversity. After the Euros, he proved that, racially abused, also physically spent, having played so many games for Arsenal, become the player that we really relied on. But even at his young age, came back even stronger, has probably this season been having his best season in terms of maybe not stats, but performances, because Jesus has elevated his game as well. So I'm not too worried about him from a physical or mental point of view, because he's proven to Arsenal Football Club and fans that he can balance all of that, having been the play that we've relied on. I think Ramsdale has shown that he's got a character and a personality that can overcome adversity. He jumps right back into the mix. I'm going to say something here about Benjamin White, and it's just my personal opinion. It's not based on any fact or article or anyone I've spoken to. I think he's one of those players where he probably loves his country, but it's not that important to him that he plays for England. That's just me looking from a distance at a player who doesn't really watch football, who does this as a profession and has lots of other things in his life that he's passionate about. I don't think he's affected at all mentally. And we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding when everyone comes back. So I think Mikel's been prepared for this moment. I think he's been ready for his players to come back. The issue is going to be more physically, I think, than mentally, because this team has shown growth since falling apart last season in terms of how we've started this season, Tom, and what we've seen from the World Cup. I think they're ready to come back and they're happy to be back in the Arsenal family and get rolling again.
Raj, did you want to come in?
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think part of it, we understand, part of the ID, the talent ID with Arteta and Edu is that they look at the psychological profiles of these players. And that's a big reason why they have them in the squad, right? They do a lot of work talking to the previous coaches, previous teams to understand what makes them tick, how they respond to adversity. and that mental makeup. And I don't worry about the mental side at all with any of these guys. You see how together they've been the second half of last season, right? Into this season, how they celebrate all the little things. Every game they celebrate. To me, it's not a negative. Obviously we know all this nonsense from the media comes about celebrating these games. To me, that's a huge positive because they're literally focused on every game and understanding that that nothing is given to you in the Premier League, right? So on one hand, it's funny that people say nothing's given to you and it's hard, but then you celebrate and it's a problem, right? No, like they're celebrating because they put a lot into these matches. And it's not just a cliche that they're saying, they always say game by game, right? It's a cliche. Everyone says game by game, but they're actually taking it game by game because you see how much they appreciate and celebrate every game and the wins. And then you also seen even when the team had a loss, at Old Trafford, look how they responded, right? And they went off. It could have easily been a blip. It could have easily, gone into this vicious cycle, but right afterwards, right back to winning and had a huge run. So the mental side to me, I think they've shown this incredible resilience. It's going to come down really to that physical side. And how do you reintegrate players, like you were saying, Tom? I think more so physically and having those bounce games. And then now, of course, with Jesus being out and seeing how that affects the team as well. So that to me will be more of the question mark. But that being said, every club faces that. It's not just something that's specific to Arsenal, right? So those are going to be variables for every club.
Absolutely. I did want to talk about Ben White because it's interesting. You said that you don't think that this is going to phase him really from the point of view of leaving England as kind of the sole factor in that sense. That's not going to weigh on his mind that he missed anything. I mean, England got knocked out, of course. It's not like he missed England going on to win the World Cup in a sense. The initial statement, Sophie, was from Arsenal and from the FA that said he'd gone home due to personal reasons and that they said that they hope that people will respect his privacy during this period. Now, whilst I agree with you, I don't necessarily think that the England side of things will have a mental effect on him. What I am and was concerned about and frustrated to see, was some of the stories that came out during that period that he was out. The suggestions, I think it was the Daily Star, a reporter from the Daily Star that wrote the story around how there had allegedly been a bust up with, I think it was Hollands, the assistant coach of Gareth Southgate. And then when obviously asked about that by Gareth, when Gareth Southgate was asked about that, he basically said something along the lines of, if I give you any answer to that story, it gives it anything of credibility, which, he's insinuating that there wasn't. My colleague Kai Karnak was in Dubai today watching the game and in the press conference with Arteta, and, Arteta was asked about how he kind of feels about the stories that are going around about Ben White. And he said that we can't control that. He said that he knows what Ben White is like. He talks about how much respect he has for him, how highly he rates him as a character and as a footballer. So when you kind of saw these, stories going around, and also kind of the incessant need of people to know why he'd left, what did you make of the situation as a whole and how it affects him?
I really think this is an important question that you're asking, because so many times in modern times and social media gives people permission to think they know the truth to everything, and they don't. And even a lot of the times, even people in, journalism, broadcast media, whether you're a pundit, you may think but you don't. So all we can do and what we do is provide an opinion. It's not fact, it's an opinion. But a lot of people were providing opinions on Ben White without having at least some facts available to them to back up the opinion. So we watch a game, we have facts, we have stats, and we have things that we can go by to comment on. And here's a situation where a player leaves a World Cup and everyone has an opinion. And can I just say that some of the opinions are grotesque? And this is the part of social media that is really, truly ugly. But can we also just take a beat and think about the play that we're talking about here? Gareth Southgate was given an opportunity there to elaborate on what the cause was, but chose not to. He also had the opportunity to, kind of maybe take things in a different direction, considering the narrative, the exterior narrative that was happening. Did not do that. What we're talking about here is a player who's played under Marcelo Bielsa. If you know football, and I respect any player who has played under Marcelo Bielsa, period. No matter what country, what league, at international level, which he has managed a couple of teams. If you played under Marcelo Bielsa, you need to have discipline. You need to be, you have to be able to make sacrifices. It is an intense, intense endeavor to play football for him. And he did that at Leeds. And by the way, he was a huge reason why Leeds were able to garner a promotion when they did. Graham Potter. We've seen the evolution of Potter as a manager, Tom, and what he's been able to do at Brighton. Suffers no fools, takes no prisoners, was on a mission himself, both personally and professionally. He's now the manager at Chelsea. You don't get selected by him. And then you move to Arsenal. Here's a player that has had zero controversies written about him, by the way. No issues with any manager at any point. And I feel like there's a narrative that's any opportunity to build something against Arsenal or to have an ammunition against this club to derail us from where we're at or where we're going is really quite evident to see. And I think, Raheem Sterling was treated with so much respect. A horrible, horrific experience to think that you are far away and your family is in jeopardy and something has happened to them. And rightly so, he flies home, family first, always. Written about, certainly in a different way. Benjamin White, not so much the same respect. And we've seen this before, with Rashford even. Does so many great things off the field. Written, there's always this underlying tone when they're writing about Rashford. So I think that when we're looking at the overall story, it feels like people are trying to derail Arsenal, and if they can utilize their players in any way to help do that, they will.
I do think that there is something about Arsenal. I don't know why it exists. The examples of Rashford and Sterling. What I will say on those two in particular is that there are some outlets that do write about those two, differently. Nothing to do with the club that they play for.
That's what I meant by Rashford. Done so many great things, but there's this underlying racial tone when they write about him, which is just, abhorrent.
Some of the things that I've seen written about both him and Sterling, have been, and Bukayo Saka, just on the World Cup thing, the difference in the coverage between Bukayo Saka after the Euros and Kane after the World Cup was stark. Like, you look at some of the front pages, it's concerning. On White, Raj, mentally, actually not, I suppose mentally, he did this interview, and you probably remember it because it's probably the most famous interview that he's done, where he talked about the fact that he says that he doesn't really like football. Or he said, well, he didn't say he doesn't like football. That's unfair. He said that he doesn't watch football outside of really playing it. Like, when he goes home, he doesn't go and watch a game. And this is something that's really followed him. And not only that, but when he does interviews, and this has gone quite viral as well, obviously, I find it quite amusing. Even as someone who's probably going to come face to face at some point with Ben White in the mix zone, and I'm going to have to ask him a question, I find it quite amusing how he answers some of the questions, because he's very short, he's very blunt. I do think there is some motive and, meaning and, I think he knows what he's doing with the interviews. And I think that for some people, I don't really know why they're offended by it, to be honest, because me as a journalist who's going to be one of those people, I'm not offended by it. I think it actually presents a challenge to you as a journalist to come up with questions that might provoke a better response or a more kind of thought through response from Ben White. But the interview that he did where he talked about he doesn't really watch football, or he didn't, I think he mentioned about Patrick Vieira, and he wasn't, he didn't really watch Patrick Vieira. And I know for an Arsenal fan, especially, those that have watched loads of Patrick Vieira and grew up watching Patrick Vieira, that might seem like completely alien to them. But what do you make of kind of how that's been a bit of a stigma now that's attached to him for some, and that kind of affects their viewpoint of him as not just a footballer, but as a person?
I mean, I think it's silly because, again, like what Soph was saying earlier, if you look at what he's actually done on the pitch, I mean, he's played multiple positions, right? Fit in there, sacrifice for the team. His injury record is incredible, which tells you how committed he is off the pitch. And we know Bielsa's training methods, as we saw at Leeds last season, are incredibly hard on the players. And he got through that, right? Barely missing any games. He's played through multiple knocks for Arsenal. You can see his right knee is always taped. I've commented on that multiple times. So this is a guy, when you look at actual evidence, who, if he didn't love football, love playing it, right, none of these things would exist. I think he's a guy who wants, to me, it's actually healthy. He wants a mental break from the game when he's not playing it because he spends so much time in it. That's not an unhealthy thing. It may be atypical, but to conflate that, with some negative stigma, again, to me, it's just noise again. There's always going to be noise. Even the stuff with him leaving, the England team, it's just so much noise. Speculating about it isn't worth the mental energy on it, right? Because like we've seen, we know the evidence with the guy, with the managers he's played for. We know this season adapting to the right back position and how he's done it, and he didn't do it, with a peep, right? That someone took his normal position. There's been not even one peep about how he's upset about that. He does the job and he does it really, really well, and he's committed, mentally and physically. And I think he's a guy who's just, like you said, with his answers, with how he is, he has different interests. So whenever you see someone like that, who's not the typical person, you always going to have people say things negatively about him. But I don't think he cares. And that's what I love about him. I don't think he gives a what about any of it, right? And I think that's what makes him so good on the pitch. He's focused on what the people around him think, the people who are important, his coaches, his teammates. The rest doesn't matter.
Doc, do you read medical books when you go home and you're like, or you're chilling? You take.
That's all I read. Yeah, exactly. That's all I read. No other interests in my life.
No other interests.
No.
Yeah, I think.
I guess because I want to watch. I want to read Science magazine. Is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I think it's because it's entertainment that people feel like. If Martin Scorsese came out and said, "I don't watch movies," people would be weirded out by that because he's a film. Spielberg, Scorsese, they're junkies of their craft. They watch movies. I just think maybe modern day filmmakers, modern day footballers, they're not the same. Maybe it's the psyche of a new generation and a new youth that don't feel like they have to be consumed 24/7 by their craft, Doc, and they have to actually quiet the chaos in order to maybe be able to hone their craft. It's a different beast, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also now it's a different. I mean, you have social media, so you're constantly bombarded by things. So you need these breaks, right? So it's not something you can just turn off anymore as easily as you could. I mean, we didn't have teams going on warm weather camps to get away and doing this team building before. We didn't have players who went on holidays whenever they could to get away, right? It's just the times have changed. There's so much more coverage of these players, so much more of a microscope that, to me, it's healthy to get away from some of these things, especially if you're the type of person who's affected by them. Some people aren't. There's some people who can be on social media and understand what it is and not let it affect them. Great. There's some who aren't able to do that, right? So if you're not, then just get away from it. And I think he does a great job of that. And this thing that he's not watching football. You know how much film he's probably watching with the club, right?
Yeah.
Like, get out of here. He's probably watching so much film on these teams, right? So he's probably overall watching more than any fan is, and in much more depth, right? He just doesn't care to watch more of it when he wants a break. Who cares?
It's funny, the quarterback of the Bengals as well, Tom. I don't know if you follow or you saw, but Joe Burrow, he's quite a protege. I mean, he's a big deal here, and won the championship at college level, and really got stuck into social media. Was doing a show with a very popular host here called Colin Cowherd and stuff like that, and he's chosen to take a break takes these breaks every month or so from social media in order to just reset and just refocus, because before he knows it, it starts snowballing and he realizes he's in the mire of all of it. So I always find that really interesting with the modern day athlete and the other things that they're having to combat and deal with versus maybe what someone like Kev was dealing with back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, social media, like I wish I could quit it I physically can't, well, not physically, but I professionally cannot because of my job. Like, I have to be on social media. It's the best. It is, reluctantly, you have to say it's the best source of regular, persistent updates on so many different stories and things. It's an information overload that you have to, if you're not there, you just feel like you're missing out on learning something that's going on, especially, and I'm just in the world of Arsenal. Arsenal makes up a tiny percentage of what happens on social media, which is scary to think about. But if there was a way of kind of giving it a break for a month, I would. When I went on my honeymoon, I feel that's probably the first times I've had a genuine break, from social media for a while. Like, I pre-recorded all the shows, as you know, Sophie, because you came on one of them. That was such a nice detox, from it. And I agree with you, Raj, about what you said about Ben White. He's probably watching so much football, like at the club, and analysing, and his own football, his own performances. The analysts go through, the performance with the players. We saw it in the All or Nothing documentary, them going through
the private sessions too, Tom.
Yeah,
well,
one-on-one. Yeah, like Carlos Cuesta.
Yeah.
The guy who does the individual stuff. He's great. He's a really nice guy, by the way, as well. He's really kind of personable, and you can tell why Arteta's got him in the group, because he really is kind of that person to person, can make friends and talk with anyone. Got a few friends I went to uni with that exactly like that. They can just go out and they'll make 5 friends on a night out without a question. So yeah, I think that's
I did a similar trip like a couple of years ago. I went in, my partner's family's from Idaho. So, we're talking proper camping. It's not California camping, Doc. I think you know what I mean, right? There's California camping and then there's camping. And we're out and there's no cell phone service, Tom. And it is like literally 3 days, no phone. And it's the most liberating feeling.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. It really is. And it really makes you super engaged in the moment. And I don't blame athletes who are not on social media, or those who take a break from social media, because, we talk to the doc all the time here about physicality and the health perspective from that front. But in modern sports, especially, the mental side of things is massive. So, yeah.
Yeah. I tell you, one of the worst jobs in the world must be running a footballer's Twitter account. That must be one of the worst jobs when you think about it, because they have to see all the abuse, that someone that they obviously work with is facing. Must be awful. Maybe I'm underestimating the benefits of it. Maybe someone who's listening and does that job. If you are, please get in touch, because I'd love to learn about it.
That'd be a good guest, Tom.
It would be a good guest, one of our features when we start getting those rolling as soon as possible. But yeah, that would be a great idea, to speak to someone who works maybe in social media in sports and speak to them about what that's like. If you are one of those people, get in touch. And if you genuinely, we're going to be hoping to introduce some kind of like 10-minute mini features on this show outside of the normal podcast that kind of get edited in part of the way through these, once we've got kind of our feet under the table with this. So if you feel as though you're in a business in the world of health and stuff like that, or social media, or anything relating to the world of sport as well, of course, linking in to make it relevant, let us know. Send us a DM. We're all available. And I'm sure we'll be happy to hear from you. The final, there's one quick topic and then one main topic before we talk to the last part of the show. Quick topic, Raj, I want to discuss with you, because you quote tweeted the image, of course, that we've seen from Gabriel Jesus. It's been a week now since the surgery-ish, around that. He's still wearing the what's the technical term for what he's wearing? I've worn it and I can't remember what it's called anymore. It's like the brace, is it, that you guys?
Yeah, it's called a knee brace. This is like a knee extensor brace, because he's locked.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's very normal for someone that's been. I mean, I remember I think I took mine off after 2 days. Like, I was encouraged to try and walk or try and move my knee when I had surgery on a ruptured ACL, and I had the hamstring tendon reconstruction on my left knee, and I was kind of encouraged to be active and walking as soon as I could, and as soon as it was comfortable. But he's obviously a week later still in this brace. Tell me kind of how, just from that image, and I know it's very difficult to kind of ascertain loads of information, but kind of where's your perception around that and what you've seen of it so far?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is we don't really know. He's in the brace in that image. We don't know if he's in it all day.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know. It could just be something where they're trying to wean him off of it as well, right? And so that's why it's so hard to say based on that, kind of, what's going on. Until we really see more activity, there's just not enough information to really give on it, right? So, because it might be something where he had just done, some physio, and they want him back in the brace right after. So it's just a static image. That's why I then commented on it saying, I think even Mikel said this, right? Like there's no timeline until he starts to really. Actually, Mikel didn't say this. He just said there's no timeline. I'm saying there's no timeline until they see how he responds to some of this physio early progressions. That's when you start to see more of a kind of clearer picture because you have more information available. And so, yeah, hard to really say anything on him thus far. The positive thing I would say is that he seems to still be in very good spirits. Even he had a video last week, right, where he was like kind of singing and stuff. So that's the mental part is huge to understand how you're gonna see it as an opportunity rather than something that's going to kind of really impact you negatively.
Yeah,
that's critical. That's critical for rehab, especially during the season. So that's really the one positive silver lining on the rest. Still hard to really give much information on that.
Yeah, I remember Hector Bellerin when he did his knee. He did that documentary series, didn't he? When he documented kind of returning from that injury, and I suppose that kept his mental state up. It's a shame that he didn't ever respond. He didn't come back a player that we saw prior to that injury. But from a mental side, I think it certainly helped him. The final topic before we go on to our end of show piece is I can't really not talk about transfers. We didn't really touch on transfers too much in episode 1. This week, Sophie, we've seen kind of a transfer explosion, mainly from David Ornstein at The Athletic. He dropped a huge kind of vast piece of information on lots of different players on Monday. In short, if you did miss it, listeners, it was Arsenal are looking at Danilo in January. It was quite a big, interesting story because, that really looked like something that might happen. They are considering entering the race for Mateus Cunha at Atletico Madrid, who is of interest to Wolves and Everton because of the striker situation, which could be a hint that Jesus' injury is certainly weighing on their minds about whether they'll, tweak or pivot in this window. The other one is that people who are high up in kind of the recruitment end of things are basically saying that João Felix should choose Arsenal stylistically because he's a better fit than most other places. And then the main headline one is, of course, that Mykhailo Mudryk is Arsenal's priority during this window, and that this €100 million public price tag behind the scenes seems to be a lot lower. Well, not a lot lower, but significantly lower than €100 million, and that Arsenal are feeling they have a good chance, I think was the quote that was used in the article, of getting that deal done. So we'll focus on kind of this forward area. So Mudryk, 21 years old, João Felix, 23 years of age, more of a striker, more versatile. How are you feeling about Arsenal and their proactiveness at this stage, and how are you feeling about how good we might be aggressively in the market this winter?
Yeah, first thing is one more proven than the other, although the other is and has done well in Europe. Okay, so I said that on our show and kind of got killed from a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, Mudryk's been." Well, let's be honest, one is more proven than the other, but the other has massive ceiling. He's got huge potential, and I think would be an exciting addition to the team. Has versatility as well, and wants to be at the club, which I think is a massive difference for the Arsenal Football Club these days. We saw that happen with Zinchenko and Jesus. They really wanted to be at the club. Thomas Partey, no Champions League football, but wanted to come to Arsenal Football Club. We were able to dangle that carrot. Even if you want to go further back, Aubameyang and Lacazette, Kieran Tierney, all came to Arsenal Football Club without Champions League football. So here we are now. I think much more culturally elevated as a club. And a new DNA and profile that's building for us, a reinvention of Arsenal, if you like. And I think there's a different attraction to us now. People call it a project. I still call it Arsenal Football Club. It's an alluring factor, but now we're going places. That's the difference. There's a manager who is driving the club in the right direction, a hierarchy who is helping him be able to achieve those goals, and players who we're bringing in that are totally differently built from a DNA and profile perspective. So I think those two players that you mentioned, really, I think you bring those two players in January, my goodness, that's exciting. And people may think that, Felix hasn't been that great, but you got to take into account manager versus style of play, right? I didn't think he was ever really the right fit to go to Atletico Madrid,
Yeah.
Tom.
Yeah.
And this player who could have played, I think, for any club anywhere in the world, he's that talented. Arsenal fans, that would be a major coup if we were to sign this player. Now, he's going to be exceptionally expensive. I'm not sure if we'll go that extra mile and that extra dollar. Mudryk, on the other hand, I think is something that is immediate and exciting and can happen. The other, a little bit more far-reaching. Are we ending up in that Vlahovic basket, in that Usam hour when he was hot stuff? Is that where that's going? But I think that
was actually the backup name for this podcast, Hot Stuff, by the way.
Was it Hot Stuff? Yeah, okay. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be you and your 8 a.m. shows are about to get lit and on fire because you've got literally 31 days of it come January 1st, and you're already, plugging away on that. So we'll see. I do think we have to show ambition. That's the bottom line. We have to show ambition.
And I think for me, ambition, and I think people sometimes confuse this. Ambition is not how much you spend; it's what you spend it on. That's the key thing for me. It's about competitive quality being.
Well, how much did we spend for Jesus and Zinchenko?
Exactly, I think that was reasonable amounts of money for those players. 30 million for Zinchenko, great deal.
That showed major ambition, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really important to make sure that you are spending the right amount. I think João Felix and Mudryk together is near impossible. The only way I think that we can pull that off is if we somehow agree a loan with an option/obligation with Atletico that we pay it in the summer. That's the only way I can see both of them happening.
Would you send Fabio Vieira the other way?
On loan? Is that what you're saying? For like 6 months or permanently?
I wouldn't do that to him.
You wouldn't? You wouldn't, Doc? Why not?
Play under El Chola. I mean, ask Felix how he likes playing at Atletico, right? In that very, very strict system, right? So,
but for us, in order for Arsenal Football Club to get what they want, are we willing to maybe put Fabio Vieira in the negotiation basket here?
I'd be shocked.
I'm not saying they're exactly the same player, but
I don't think. I mean, the way he's been playing with this now. Vieira is interesting because he didn't have a preseason because he was injured. And so he wasn't able to adapt physically or play with the players. I think he's been playing quite well during this preseason. He's been developing his conditioning and his physical fitness. So I'd be shocked. If anything, I would see more of an Odegaard example where he's alone for a second half of the season, and then they try to get a transfer fee for him. The confounding factor there becomes you have a lot more teams who are going to be in for Felix in the summertime, right? Who can spend more money. PSG comes to mind. Jorge Mendes relationship with them comes to mind as well, right? So I think it could be a question of, can you get Felix now? But that outlay is still going to be significant because it looks like, there's a lot of smoke with Mudryk. There's probably going to be fire. I mean, the interviews he's been giving are pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like
with our player's wife, that's great. I love that. And I love the fact that she was like, "Go Gunners" at the end of the interview. That's brilliant. Fair play to her.
I mean, both are very different profiles, right? Mudryk is much more that winger. Obviously, people look at his pace, but he offers a certain directness that we lack. Even the way that Saka and even Emil Smith-Rowe at times play is quite different to how he can attack. And because he's just so dangerous with his ability to attack you and beat players one-on-one, which we've seen multiple times. I think the biggest concern for him is how he'll play versus a low block, because he's used to playing more so on that counter, right, and using his pace and his power. But I think his ability to beat defenders 1v1, even versus a low block, and generate that gravity, have two guys come over to him is incredibly important to play versus a low block. And I think he offers a different type of tool and versatility that Arteta is looking for, because what I've seen with all the talent ID with our team is that every single player that we have offers a different skill set. So you can ask different questions of an opponent in multiple different ways. And when I watch Mudryk play, he offers a unique skill set that we don't offer right now. And I think that's why they want him. João Felix, I mean, I think from his profile, his ability to play across the front three, his ability to interchange spaces, his IQ, his chemistry, and the fact that he's not, having to play, park the airplane anymore, every game. And so I think that himself, he'd be very excited, but I just don't know financially how that would work. So I think that's the question. Is Mudryk, I see that happening. I think that kind of rules out a move for Felix unless it's that loan move.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's your transfer fix, people. Of course, if you want more, you can get a daily fix of it on my show at 8 a.m. And of course, Sophie covers plenty of the transfer talk leading up to things in the Highbury squad as well. So make sure you're subscribing over there. And I'm sure Raj will be giving his thoughts and feelings about the fitness and, injury records of players linked to the club as well at 3CB Performance. So make sure you're checking out all of the guys' socials. And Owen will be making fun of them on the Gooners pod. So you can go check that out there, of course. Owen, by the way, is ill. That's why he's not here. Sorry, Soph, go on.
No, I said that's amazing. You got everything covered there with all.
There you go. Absolutely, you've got discussion, fitness, and taking the mic. That's.
Is he not feeling well because he's worked out too much? That must be it. He's too much pressure.
Himself into the ground. Yeah, it's definitely not that. Anyway, it's a good segue that because to round off today's show, it is here in the UK. It's been snowing. Outside, it's very, very icy. I was speaking to the guys before we came on the call that my mum actually rang me up today. Moments after she'd slipped on her backside in the snow, she was just walking. If you knew her, she's not the type like me to go out running. So if she's walking as slowly and carefully as possible and slipping over, I've got no chance doing my mile a day. So the challenge is for you two, just to kind of round off today's show, is for those that are, and of course you've been telling me it's been stormy out there in California as well. So running or walking in the rain is not for everybody. It is for some, as Sophie was telling us, but not for everybody. So Raj, from a cardio perspective, if you're indoors, and maybe there's tips that people have carried over from the pandemic, actually, how can you work your cardio and get kind of that heart rate going when you're stuck indoors?
Yeah, I mean, an easy way of just body weight circuit training can be quite effective as well. And so, where you take 4 or 5 body weight movements and you do them on repeat, take a break, and then you repeat it for circuits, right? So it's anything that any movement is going to get your heart rate going. Is it going to be the same feeling or potentially as effective as running? Yeah, possibly not, right? But it's still some cardiovascular effect. And then you'll probably get some strengthening in there too. So a lot of it is just adaptation to what's going on around you.
So what gems of knowledge have we got from?
So it has been stormy here in California, and I was literally going to reach over here because, in fact, I might. Hold on one second. So
yeah, go for it. I'm really curious now what you're going to go. This isn't prepared. I'm worried now.
I've got my medicine ball here, so I'm always wondering it's always like sit-ups on the stomach. I've got my medicine ball.
Yeah.
I've also got my Tom. I've got my yoga mat here, so I'm assuming I can find something on YouTube. Find a class, do something with the yoga mat. And they're a little bit buried, but I have these bands, Doc, that I bought, and I'm like, oh, this is great.
Resistance bands, are they?
Yeah, and Tom, here's the scoop, and everyone might relate. Before I go out and cycle and get on my bike or get in the rowing machine, I've got to make sure that I'm stretched and my muscles are, I'm safe. I don't want to pull an injury. And so, I do that for a little bit, and then I extend it, and I extend it, and then it's extended. And before you know it, I'm still not on the rowing machine or on the bike, Doc. So I've got all this stuff here, and it's been stormy the last 2 days. And I'm going to make a massive confession to everyone. I actually was looking at it and planning on what to do while I was having a burger.
Okay.
So bad.
Good. But we appreciate honesty. This is the eat, sleep, repeat Arsenal. So, we've mastered the eat part.
One part down.
I can't repeat that though, Tom. That's the part. That's the bad.
That is the important part.
How do I switch off Netflix, get off the computer and actually take the mat or the ball and make it happen?
For me, and this isn't going to work for everybody, I tend to strip off and look in the mirror. That pretty much gets me off my arse most of the time.
Right.
That's motivation for me. I'm like, right, we're going to sort this out. That's what that is my motive. And that's not going to work for everybody, because it's just different people. But I think that the key, it is really demotivating at the moment, when the weather's not great and when you actually prevented, if it's snowy outside, from doing stuff. So it's really tricky. I think, if you live with somebody, that helps, especially if they're trying to do fitness as well, and they can obviously help you, and you can work out together and you can do different things together. I think that's important. I think also planning out your day is key in me. Like, I'm going to go, my lunch break is at 12:30. So from 12:30 to 12:15, I'm going to do, 15 minutes of a hit session or whatever. And later on in the day at, 4 o'clock, I might do another 15 minutes. And if I could just do half an hour in the day and I've split that up into 2 15-minute sections, great. That for me is the key one. If I haven't planned it, I'm probably not going to do it, So I think always making sure I've got it planned out and scheduled is good. And I can see a doctor below me nodding his head, so I must be doing something right in that sense. So yeah, lovely stuff. Any final tips or tricks, Raj?
No, I think what you said, I think, any new habit, right? And this is really, in the end, it's about developing a habit, and you have to be intentional about it. So you have to set, I think if you can set a time, well, a few different things. One, having it be small enough that you'll like, if your goal is I'm going to work out for an hour and you haven't worked out in X amount of time, not going to happen. Right. So do something that's a reasonable time frame. Try to do it at the same time every day. So it just becomes, right. So it's not even something you think about anymore. It's just part of your schedule, and those two things. And then having it planned out, you want to reduce the barrier to entry as much as you possibly can. And then the fourth thing, if possible, like with cardio, if you have a favorite show that you love to watch, watch it while you do some cardio. So instead of associating this with something you hate to do, you associate it with something you like to do, right? 30 minutes of a show you can watch while you're doing some cardio, and you don't even feel it as much. And then naturally in your brain, it starts rewiring as, hey, I actually kind of like to do this, because you're overlapping something you like to do with something you may or may not like to do. And so over time, that just kind of helps you get over some of these early obstacles, or listen to a podcast that you really like, whatever it is, right? So try to overlap some of those things you like to do with working out. And eventually, once you see the results and you get into a habit, you might not have to do that. And so may or may not. So those just, some easy kind of like early tricks that I always talk about. And so I think the biggest thing, try not to do too much at the start. Just ease into it. Like you said, 10, 15-minute morsels, and then it becomes self-reinforcing.
Lovely
Right.
job.
I'll put Anfield 89 on, and then I'll put the Invincibles doc, and then I'll just keep going. I'll keep going.
There you go.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
want more
And listen to this podcast too, and keep going.
What's better to motivate you than listening to yours? That is the way forward.
That medicine ball was dusty, guys. I'm not going to lie.
Well, yeah, there you go. There's some dusty dumbbells downstairs, that's for sure, that are going to be much, much more in use in the coming weeks. I haven't yet set up the Strava groups. That hasn't stopped people that are listening to the podcast finding me, because I get emails now saying, so-and-so has followed you on Strava. I'm like, no, they're finding me. They're going to know what I've not been doing. But yeah, the reason why I haven't set it up yet is because it's been really snowy and I don't really want people to see that I haven't been doing too much running of late. But that will obviously be back underway next week. It's meant to go up from, it was -3 this week. It's going up to 13 in a space of a week next week. Nice. So it's going to be much better. That's Celsius, of course, not Fahrenheit. But yeah, it's going to be hopefully much better. So by next week's show, when Owen hopefully will be back and feeling better as well, we will have the Strava group or community or club or whatever it's called. I'm going to get that up and running so we can all get started and added to that. And also, of course, whether or not there'll be a show the following week, because that will be the day after Boxing Day. So availability around Christmas, of course, we're going to be, there might not be a podcast, and we'll obviously talk to you about that when we have more details on that. But we will be back, don't worry, once the Christmas festivities have completed. And let's be real. it's Christmas. You know, there is always cheat days around Christmas, so it might not even be the best time to be talking. Yeah, it might not be the best time to be talking about that sort of thing anyway, because we're focusing on stuffing our faces with Yorkshire puddings and roast potatoes and turkey, or the equivalent vegetarian option, of course. So yes, lovely stuff. That is going to bring us to an end of today's show. Thank you so much for listening. Sophie, thank you for your time. Much appreciated, as always.
Thank you for having me. Always awesome. Got my doc fix, got my Tom fix. I'm ready to go. I dusted off the medicine ball. Let's do this, people. Come with me. Who's coming with me other than Flipper here? Next time I will have a fish.
Lovely stuff. You can make sure you check out Sophie's show at the Highbury Squad's regular shows over there on Arsenal. So if you're not done listening to Arsenal stuff here, you can then hop over to the Highbury Squad and listen there. Doc Raj, thank you so much, mate, for your time as per. Thank you so much for your expertise. And yeah, tell people where they can find you, of course, as well, and what you're going to be up to.
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for having me. You can always find me on pretty much all social media channels, YouTube, Twitter, here more often, obviously, TikTok a lot more frequently as well, at 3CB Performance as well. And so not really up to much, man. Seeing patients, looking forward to this, of course, Saturday's match, correct? And then World Cup final, of course, coming up. So that'll be fun. Of course, holiday stuff's always fun as well. So.
Absolutely, yeah. Christmas is upon us. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the festivities. I'm looking forward to getting to the Emirates on Saturday. I'm going to be there on Saturday, so I'm looking forward to that. Got that confirmed today, which is nice. And Boxing Day as well was confirmed too. So
yes.
Double Arsenal fix at the Emirates this coming week. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, maybe I can give you some gems from the mix zone. And maybe I might be able to sneakily ask a health question to one of our boys in the mix zone. We'll have to see if that comes up with the opportunity. Do drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, go follow at the Highbury Squad, at 3CB Performance, at the Gooner Talk TV. We will see you, and Owen, hopefully we'll be back soon, and we wish him the best as well. But thank you for listening. See you soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.